The sky was dark and heavy with thick rain clouds. The rain fell hard, hitting the ground and making the road slippery. Emily, a teenage girl, was walking home from school. She had her small backpack on and an umbrella, but the wind was strong, and the rain soaked her clothes quickly. As she walked near the old bridge by the river, she heard a loud crashing noise. Turning quickly, she saw a big truck lose control. The driver was struggling to keep it on the road, but the slippery, wet road was too dangerous. The truck swerved, wildly, then suddenly flew off the bridge and into the fast-moving river below. Emily gasped and froze for a moment, her heart beating fast. The truck disappeared under the water with a splash, and the river's current was strong and dangerous. She looked around and saw no one else was near to help. Without thinking twice, Emily dropped her umbrella and ran to the edge of the bridge. The river water was cold and rising quickly because of the heavy rain. She could see the truck's roof just under the water, shaking as the river pushed it. Emily knew she had to act fast. Taking a deep breath, Emily jumped from the bridge into the cold, rushing water. The water was strong, and the current pulled her down, but she fought to stay above. She swam closer to the sinking truck, her hands shaking from cold and fear. The truck was tilting, almost upside down, and Emily could see a man trapped inside. He was unconscious and bleeding from his head. His face was pale, and water was filling the truck's cabin fast. She knew if she did not help soon, he might drown. Emily reached the truck and smashed the window with a rock she found nearby. The glass broke, cutting her hand slightly, but she did not care. She pushed the door open and pulled the man out. His body was heavy, but she managed to hold him tight as the water tried to pull both of them down. She kicked hard with her legs, swimming back toward the shore. The river was rough, and it was hard to keep hold of the man. But Emily's will to save him was stronger than the fear in her heart. Finally, after what felt like minutes, but could have been hours, Emily dragged the man onto the muddy riverbank. She laid him down and checked his breathing. He was alive, but barely. His skin was cold and wet, and blood was coming from a deep cut on his forehead. Emily wanted to call for help, but her phone had fallen in the river. She looked around desperately. The rain was still pouring, and the road was empty. No cars, no people. As she gently shook the man's shoulder, he slowly opened his eyes. His dark eyes looked at her with confusion and pain. He tried to speak, but his voice was weak. "Don't let them find me," he whispered. Then his eyes closed again. Emily did not understand what he meant. Who was he? And who were they? Emily's heart pounded with questions. She wanted to know the man's name, why he was in that truck, and why someone wanted to find him so badly. She pulled her jacket around him to keep him warm. Even though she was scared, she promised herself she would keep him safe. She looked up at the stormy sky. The rain was still falling hard, and the river's water was rising, but Emily did not move. She stayed there on the riverbank, watching over the stranger she saved. She hoped someone would come soon to help, but deep inside, she felt this was only the beginning of something much bigger and more dangerous than she could imagine. Emily's mind raced with worry. What if the man was in danger because of something important? What if the people after him were close? The strange words he whispered haunted her. "Don't let them find me." She had no idea what it meant, but she knew she could not ignore it. The rain slowed down a little, but the night was still cold and dark. Emily wrapped her arms around the man, trying to keep him warm and safe until help came. She looked around again and saw no one. She was alone with a stranger who needed her help. The river flowed fast and wild, but Emily's thoughts were louder. She felt a strange connection to the man, like their meeting was not by accident. As she waited on the riverbank, she promised herself that she would find out the truth about this man and protect him no matter what. The night grew darker, and Emily stayed awake. She held the stranger's hand and whispered, "I won't let them find you." Little did she know, her promise would change her life forever. The morning light was weak, and the rain had stopped. Emily woke up feeling tired but determined. The stranger she saved was still asleep on the old couch in her small living room. His face was pale, and he looked very weak. She had put a wet towel on his forehead and covered him with a blanket. Her mother was still asleep in the next room, unaware of the visitor. Emily did not know what to do next. The man had no ID, no phone, no wallet. When he woke up, she planned to ask his name and who he was. But what if he was in danger? What if the people looking for him came to find her too? Hours later, the man slowly opened his eyes. He looked around, confused and scared. Emily sat quietly beside him. "Do you remember your name?" she asked softly. He looked at her, shaking his head. "I don't remember anything," he said, in a low voice. His eyes were tired and he seemed lost. "Where am I?" he asked. "You're safe here," Emily replied. "My name is Emily. You don't have to be afraid." The man tried to sit up, but pain stopped him. Emily helped him lie back gently. "You're hurt. You need to rest." Days passed, and the man stayed at Emily's house. She gave him clean clothes and food. She gave him a new name, Jake. He did not remember his past, but Emily saw kindness in his eyes. Jake helped her around the house, and sometimes they talked about simple things. The weather, the town, small dreams. One afternoon, Emily was in the kitchen when she heard a knock on the door. A tall man in a black coat stood outside. His eyes were sharp and cold. "Have you seen this man?" he asked, holding out a photo. It was Jake's picture. Emily's heart stopped. She shook her head. "No, I haven't seen him." The man looked closely at Emily. "If you see him, tell him we are still looking," he said, then left quickly. Emily closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. She did not want trouble, but she knew Jake was not just a lost stranger. Someone dangerous was after him. Why? She did not know, but she felt the danger growing near. That night, Emily and Jake sat by the fireplace. Jake looked at the flames and said quietly, "I think I was running from something. Someone wanted to hurt me." Emily reached out and held his hand. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." Jake smiled weakly. "Thank you, Emily. You saved my life." But deep inside, both of them knew this was only the beginning. The secret behind Jake's past was waiting to be uncovered. And when it came to light, nothing would be the same again. The next few days passed slowly, but the tension in Emily's home grew stronger. Jake's strength was returning little by little, but his memory stayed blank. He could not remember his name before Jake, or why someone was chasing him. Emily did everything she could to help him feel safe. She kept the windows locked and watched the road carefully whenever she went outside. One evening, as the sun began to set, Emily was cleaning the living room when she heard a strange noise outside. It was soft but clear, a car door closing quickly. She froze and looked out the window. A black car was parked at the end of the street. A man in a dark suit stepped out and looked around slowly. Emily's heart raced. She knew this man was not here to make friends. Emily quickly closed the curtains and whispered, "Jake, someone is here." Jake stood up slowly, steadying himself against the wall. "We need to be careful," he said, his voice low but serious. For the first time, Emily saw a spark of something dangerous in his eyes, fear mixed with determination. The man in the black suit walked closer to the house, looking for any sign of them. Emily's mind raced. Should she call the police? What if they were watching her phone? She didn't want to put Jake in more danger. Instead, she grabbed a small bag and whispered to Jake, "We have to leave. Now." Without a second thought, they slipped out the back door, moving quietly through the backyard into the woods behind Emily's house. The rain from the past days had made the ground muddy and slippery, but they kept running. Emily could hear the man's footsteps behind, them getting closer. Suddenly, Jake stopped. "We need a plan," he said, breathing hard. "I remember something. A safe place where no one can find me." Emily looked at him, surprised. "Where?" Jake pointed ahead. "Deep in the forest, there's an old cabin. It belongs to a friend of mine. If we can get there, we'll be safe for a while." The woods were dark and thick, but Emily followed Jake without fear. She trusted him now, even though his past was a mystery. They ran fast, pushing through the branches and leaves, until finally the small cabin appeared in a clearing. The door creaked as Jake opened it. Inside, the cabin was simple but warm. A small fire was already burning in the fireplace, and there were blankets on a wooden bed. Emily looked around, feeling a little safer than before. They locked the door behind them and sat by the fire. Jake looked at Emily with a tired smile. "Thank you for helping me." Emily smiled back. "I'm not leaving you now." Outside, the rain started again, tapping softly on the roof. But inside the cabin, Emily and Jake felt safe, for now. Still, the question hung in the air. Who was after Jake? And what secret was so dangerous that it could change their lives? Forever? The rain continued to fall softly outside the cabin, but inside, the silence felt heavy. Emily sat close to the fire, watching Jake carefully. He seemed calmer now, but the tired look in his eyes never left. She wanted to help him remember, to find the answers they both needed. That night, as the fire crackled, Jake finally spoke. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. "I think the people after me are not just any strangers. They want something I have, a secret that could hurt a lot of people." Emily's eyes widened. "What kind of secret?" Jake hesitated, then pulled a small, folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. He handed it to Emily. "This was in my truck when I was found. I don't know what it means, but I think it's important." Emily carefully opened the paper. It was covered with strange symbols and numbers she didn't understand. "Do you know what this is?" Jake shook his head. "No, but I think it's a code. Maybe something only the right person can read." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The mystery was deeper than she thought. Suddenly, a noise outside made them both freeze. Someone was moving near the cabin. Jake quickly stood and looked out the window. Two shadowy figures were walking slowly through the woods. "We have to hide," Jake whispered urgently. Emily nodded, heart pounding. They grabbed a small bag with their most important things and slipped out through the back door into the dark forest. The rain was heavier now, soaking them as they ran. Emily's feet slipped on wet leaves, but Jake helped her keep balance. They moved quickly, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the cabin. After a long run, they found a small cave hidden behind thick bushes. Inside, it was dry and quiet. They collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. "We can't go back," Jake said, his voice low but steady. "They will keep coming." Emily looked at him, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then we have to find out what this paper means. We have to stop them." Jake nodded. "I think the answers are closer than we think. But it will be dangerous." As they settled into the cave, Emily held the mysterious paper tightly. She knew their journey was far from over. The secrets Jake carried were powerful, and someone was willing to do anything to get them back. Outside, the rain kept falling, hiding their small hiding place in the dark woods. But inside, Emily and Jake prepared for what would come next. The chase was not over, and the real danger was just beginning. The cave was cold and dark, but Emily and Jake stayed close, trying to rest. The mysterious paper lay between them, its strange symbols still puzzling. Neither of them knew where to start, but they knew time was running out. The people chasing Jake were getting closer every hour. The next morning, Emily suggested, "Maybe someone in town can help us. Someone who understands codes or puzzles." Jake nodded slowly. "There's one person, an old professor who lives on the edge of town. He's quiet but very smart. Maybe he can read the paper." They decided to leave the cave before the hunters found them. Emily packed a small bag with food and water, and Jake put the paper safely inside his jacket. They moved carefully through the forest, avoiding main roads and any signs of people. When they reached the small town, it looked peaceful. But Emily knew appearances could be deceiving. They found the professor's house, an old, dusty place, covered with vines. Emily knocked on the door, her heart beating fast. After a moment, an elderly man opened it. His eyes were sharp and curious. "What do you want?" he asked. Emily explained everything quickly: the crash, Jake's memory loss, the chase, and the strange paper. The professor took the paper and studied it carefully. "This is no ordinary code," he said slowly. "It's a message written in an ancient language mixed with numbers. Whoever wrote this wanted it to be very hard to read." Jake looked worried. "What does it say?" The professor smiled faintly. "Not yet. I need time to work on it." Emily felt hope, but also fear. The more they learned, the more dangerous things became. That night, as they stayed in the professor's guest room, they heard a noise outside, soft footsteps and whispers. The hunters were closing in. Emily and Jake shared a look. They knew they couldn't wait long. The next morning, the professor came with news. "I found part of the message. It speaks of a hidden place where great power is kept. Whoever controls it can change everything." Jake's eyes grew wide. "That's why they want me." Emily took his hand. "We have to find that place before they do." With new hope but heavy hearts, they prepared to leave. Danger was all around, but Emily and Jake knew one thing: they would fight to protect the secret, no matter what. Their story was far from over. The race for the hidden power had just begun. The sun was barely up when Emily and Jake quietly packed their things. The professor had given them a rough map based on the decoded message. It pointed to a place deep in the mountains, far from town. They knew it would be dangerous, but it was their only chance to stay ahead of the hunters. As they left the professor's house, Emily felt a mix of fear and hope. Jake looked determined, his memory still a mystery, but his will to survive strong. They traveled by foot and sometimes by hitching rides in trucks that passed by, always careful to avoid being seen. Days passed, and the mountains grew closer. The air became colder, and the path more difficult. Emily's legs ached, but she kept going, knowing that giving up was not an option. One evening, as the sun set behind the peaks, they reached a hidden valley. At its center stood an ancient stone building covered in moss and vines. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt important, powerful. Jake pulled out the paper again and compared it to the symbols carved into the stone walls. "This is the place," he said softly. Suddenly they heard voices behind them. The hunters had found them. Emily grabbed Jake's hand, and they ran toward the building. Inside, the air was cold and filled with silence. They found a heavy wooden door with strange symbols glowing faintly. Jake touched the door, and the symbols brightened. Slowly, the door opened to reveal a room filled with light. In the center was a small box, glowing with energy. Jake stepped forward. This is what they want, power beyond imagination. Emily watched carefully as Jake opened the box. A bright light filled the room, and Jake's eyes shone with something new. Memory, strength, and hope. Outside, the hunters reached the valley, but it was too late. Emily and Jake had found the secret. Together they stepped out, ready to face whatever came next. Their journey had changed them forever. The mystery was solved, but their story, and their fight, was only just beginning.